Hello everyone, my name is Zheng Jiewei from Zhejiang University. I feel really honored to share my recent research with you. That is, the visual memory drives unconscious processing in a coarse but not fine manner. And previous study revealed that the visual memory and conscious awareness has a really close relationship. For example, in a study in 2013, participants were asked to memorize a color and then finish a BCFS task. And they found that if the target in the BCFS task is the same way that in visual memory task, it will get faster access to people's awareness. And this phenomenon reflects a kind of interaction between visual memory and conscious awareness. And what's more, there is a lot of evidence showing that the information complexity can influence visual memory processing, and unconscious processing is influenced by information attributes as well. So we want to explore the hierarchical character of this kind of interaction by testing which information processing level could it occur. And we conducted 3 experiments to investigate this question. And in experiment 1, we used the random stimuli consisting of both color and gap orientation, which can be seen as the coarse feature and fine feature respectively. And the trial sequence is shown at the left part of the screen. In experiment 1A, participants were asked to memorize the color of the random stimuli while ignore its gap orientation. And then they will have to finish a BCFS task. In the BCFS task, a target will appear to the dominant eye, which could be initially expressed by the continuous flashed mask of the non-dominant eye. And they were asked to report the location of the target, left or right, as soon as they get aware of it. And finally, they will have to finish a chain detection task to check if they really remember the color of the stimuli. And the target of the BCFS task could match the color, orientation, both features, and non-features of the memory item, which will be referred to as the color match condition, orientation match condition, object match condition, and non-match conditions. And in experiment 1B, participants were asked to memorize the gap orientation while ignore its color, and the rest were almost the same with the experiment 1A. And here's the result. We can see that in experiment 1A, which color needed to be remembered, we found a very significant main effect of match conditions. Critically, compared with the non-match conditions, participants respond faster in the color match and object match condition, but not in the orientation match conditions. However, in experiment 1B, well, gap orientation to be remembered. There's no such kind of effect. So the results indicate that the visual memory promoted unconscious processing only for the coarse feature, such as the color, but not the fine feature like gap orientation. And some people may argue that this kind of result derives from the difference of feature dimensions. For example, the difference between color and gap orientation. So we conducted the experiment 1C. And in this experiment, we changed the stimuli to the arrow and asked participants to memorize the arrow orientation. Now it is still the orientation, but compared with the gap orientation, it's a kind of coarse feature. Here's the result. We found a very significant main effect of match conditions as well. And In match conditions, the response time was significantly shorter than non-match conditions. So it revealed that the results before were driven by the information processing level, but not the feature dimension. And we want to extend our findings to the shape dimension, so we conduct experiment 2. Well, in experiment 2A, we use the simple shape, which is a kind of coarse feature, and in experiment 2B, we use the complex shape, it's a kind of fine feature. And when memorize the simple shape, there is a significant main effect between conditions. In all match conditions, people's response time was significantly shorter than non-match conditions. However, when memorize the complex shape, such kind of effect just disappeared. And this result was consistent with that in experiment 1. In combining experiment 1 and 2, we can say that the interaction between visual memory and conscious awareness could only occur in a coarse manner. However, we also want to know the mechanism underlying such constraints, and we have 3 possible explanations. The first, it was because of the fine feature processing in visual memory. And second, it was from the unconscious processing of the fine feature. And third, it comes from both visual memory and unconscious processing. So we conducted experiment 3. In this experiment, we use both simple shape and global local shape as a stimuli. The simple shape can be seen as the coarse feature. However, the global local shape is a little different. Well, the global part of it can be seen as a kind of coarse feature. However, the local part can be seen as the fine feature. So in experiment 3A, we want to investigate whether the constraint comes from the unconscious processing. So we ask participants to memorize the simple shape, and the target in the BCFS task is the global local shape, whose global part or local part could match the memory item. And we found that only in the global match conditions, the response time was significantly shorter than the non-match condition. So it showed that such constraints at least partly come from the unconscious processing. Well, in experiment 3B and 3C, we want to investigate whether this constraint comes from the visual memory. So we ask participants to memorize the global local shape, and the target in the BCFS task is a simple shape, which could either match the global or local part of the memory item. And the results show that in experiment 3B, that the target matches the global part, there is a significant difference between conditions. That global match condition responds faster than non-match condition. However, in experiment 3C, that the target matches the local part of memory item, there's no such differences, no such effect. So we can say that the constraints come from the visual memory as well. So in summary, we found that the visual memory drives unconscious processing in a coarse but not fine manner, and such limitation arise from the constraint of information processing, both for visual memory and unconsciousness. And consistently, a previous study found that the precision of attentional selection by visual memory is far worse than the underlying memory representation, reflecting a similar cause interaction between attention and visual memory. Together, the studies state that the early interaction between visual memory and perception is constrained by the information processing hierarchy. Nevertheless, it should be noted that in these studies, the information stored in visual memory was irrelevant for the interleaving task. It remains an open question whether such constraint exists for the relevant information stored in visual memory. That is the further research actions. Well, I would like to appreciate my supervisor Chen Hui and colleagues for helping me. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions or suggestions about my research. And what's more, our lab is recruiting postdoctoral fellows. If you're interested in our work, please contact Professor Chen. Thank you for attention. Thank you.